This is quite fascinating. And I want to dovetail this to also your spiritual journey that you started at a very early age. But I did want to say some of the themes that are happening in the US, although I haven't been in something similar to you, it's been very different back in India and Pakistan. But there's a lot of like unrest with cryptocurrencies, for example, the monetary systems, the Federal Reserves, and there's a lot of people doing the same thing, trying to claim their sovereignty. And a lot of that comes from reinvoking the memory of the way the migrations happened into the US and the reasons for which the Constitution was written, which was property rights and freedom of speech and all those things. And people do feel that those are being threatened. And the other aspect of that was with the vaccines. And it seems like we're in this period where one of these forces is going to take over the other one. Yeah. Do you think that this has informed your spiritual journey in any way?
Yeah, I guess I started at an early age as a teenager where I was really not yet fully in life. But what I say about what you asked me is that I guess the initial philosophical system that I resonated with, brought in the West by Gurdjieff and Uspensky, somehow I fully resonated with it. And then I stayed with it, that system, to explain our inner world and our external world, because there's a cosmology aspect to it. So I somehow it stayed with me, and a lot of it is still stay with me now. It feels true. And this informs me how I looking at the world and humanity. And it might be a little gloomy, but somehow it helps me travel lighter. And so the my understanding is that, which was from the fourth way tradition, was that, well, all these things that are happening there, we are complaining and we are shocked and horrified. How can this be? How can that be there? The children, the war, the money, the drugs. The how can this be? And Gurdjieff was offering this thing like long before this stuff that's happening, was like basically humanity as a whole is, from the point of view of consciousness, asleep. So all the wrongdoings and the terrible things are a natural outcome of a collective low level of consciousness. So then, of course, it is like that. Of course, there all the money goes into wars and all the resources are hurting the planet and all kind of wrongdoings. Of course, like that, because people overall are unconscious and asleep. And that's how it is here. And actually, part of these teachings was that humanity, I hope they're wrong, but humanity as a whole doesn't wake up, doesn't become like whole humanity. And then it's like wonderful and the honey and milk and the freedom and equality and medical for everybody. It's more like some select individuals, they are jumping out of this current going nowhere towards mechanicality, asleep, unconsciousness, selfishness, ego, jump out of that and go in the opposite direction towards awakening and healing. And but it's not at the global scale. And yeah, and also this idea that it's not a mistake. God or the source absolute didn't make a mistake, that the things are like that and somehow there's something wrong and I need to change it. At some deep level, this is like the video game, and the video game virtual reality was constructed for us, was constructed. There's a great opportunity to evolve, to change one's level of consciousness. So the focus is to focus on that rather than change the video game rooms and make it more friendly or more this or that. So that's my focus. This being said, I agree with our teacher. It's like, hey, don't try to change the world, but if out of your own deep realization or awakening, I have some tendency, impulse to, I don't know, build solar in Africa or to be a psychotherapist or to do this, do it. But I do it not because I want to change the world, but because this is the best natural expression of Mihai as an instrument of source.
Yeah, you packed very deep themes there. And I myself don't have much certainty, but I resonate with what you were saying. And, looking historically, as you were saying, I don't think such a perfect world has existed. During the pandemic, I have contemplated this quite a bit because of so many things that have come to bear, I think, buried in our psyche. We are now in a period where things are just at the surface bubbling and it seems like we're being called to address them and respond to them. And I feel like the best one can do, perhaps along the same lines that you were saying, is to respond. And our ability to respond depends on how much one knows oneself, how much one has evolved oneself. But at the same time, I feel like I don't know what the answers are, but also not to worry about it. Perhaps that analogy that you gave of the video game or a divine play.
Yeah.
The only other thing that comes to mind is that I see in my own journey is that as we work on ourselves, our ability to respond and engage with whatever is presented to us, no matter how horrible or how beautiful, we can only fully engage if we have dealt with our own inner fears, because otherwise our life and our engagement is inhibited. And that does not feel good when we are inhibited and restricted. And I liked one of the things that you were saying, which is a deep current, when you were mentioning that when you were growing up, your parents and your grandparents told you perhaps to not rock the boat and not challenge authority. And I feel like that is that inhibitedness that suffocates us at a deep level. And, you always see that in the youth, in the teenagers. That's why I feel like they're inherently rebellious.
Right. Yeah. We were trained to not challenge it directly, not to stick out to the authority. However, they were modeling going undercover, hiding, and having an autonomous life as much as is possible, disregarding and ignoring the regime impositions, but undercover, hidden. So the idea not to all right, take it and be a sheep. No, it was like, hey, don't stick out, but do your life undercover.
Kind of to be more strategic.
More strategic. Yeah, I guess because if you have 50 years of this, people learn in communism. There's nothing you can do. We just need to go under, navigate, do the best we can. So yeah, maybe it's a limitation, lack of activism on my part. But sometimes I talk to my mother. She's more plugged with what's happening in Europe and tells me all this. If you listen to media, there's all these terrible things happening all the time. And from one angle, being plugged into the media, it's almost activates trauma. And so one is in a chronic state of dysregulation, they call it, like, freaking out. So, this is happening and this is happening. This is very tricky and I don't think it's innocent. And anyway, I was telling my mom, terrible things have always been happening on this planet. It's like all the time, everywhere. So it's no news. It's what it is. But yeah, but staying plugged to this just one channel of this media and all these things, that filling the mind consciousness space with fears, worries, anxiety that plug into our own unprocessed fears and anxiety. So now instead of responding from the present, from presence, from being stable, we are all the time, most people are in a state of freaking out as a default state. So a little thing will stabilize you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite fascinating. Yeah. I feel like that being present is one of the simplest things, but also very hard.